Number 1. Wayne Jenkins, ex-cop and Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force head exposed. As the leader of a specialized Baltimore Police Department unit focused on violent crimes and illicit firearm trafficking, Jenkins' decade-long career came to a halt after being ensnared in a massive corruption scandal. The FBI initiated a probe in 2015 after receiving tips about on-duty robberies by the task force members. The investigation unveiled Jenkins and his team's involvement in a host of illegal activities, such as extortion, theft, drug trafficking, and evidence tampering. As the mastermind behind illegal operations, Jenkins exploited his role as the task force leader. He and his team targeted drug dealers, stealing cash and narcotics before reselling them. They also fabricated evidence to secure convictions. When they robbed an FBI informant, a thorough investigation followed, exposing their crimes. In 2017, Jenkins and 6 officers faced federal racketeering charges. The case marked one of Baltimore Police Department's largest corruption probes, revealing systemic flaws and a culture of impunity. In 2018, Jenkins was convicted and sentenced to 25 years without parole, serving as a stern warning against corruption. Jenkins' case highlights the importance of law enforcement integrity and the severe consequences of corruption on public trust. While most officers are honest, it's crucial to hold corrupt individuals accountable. The investigation emphasizes the need for strong oversight and accountability to prevent corruption and ensure officers fulfill their duties. Ray Oliver, a Texas police officer, responded to a 911 call about underage drinking at a party on May 5, 2017. When they arrived, they allegedly heard a weapon being fired, causing panic. Oliver fired 3 shots into a vehicle, killing 15-year-old African-American boy Jordan Edwards, who was unarmed. Edwards was in the front seat, and his brothers and friends were in the car as well. One of his brothers, who was driving the car, was held overnight in police custody for questioning as a witness. Oliver's actions are an example of corrupt police officers who must be held accountable for their actions. Police Chief Jonathan Haber initially claimed that Roy Oliver was involved in an unknown altercation with a vehicle that was moving aggressively towards the officers. However, after reviewing the body cam footage, Haber acknowledged that the vehicle was driving away from them. As a result, Oliver was fired from the police force in May 2017. This is an example of a corrupt police officer being held accountable for their actions. After the incident, the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and the Dallas County District Attorney's Office launched an investigation. Roy Oliver was charged, turned himself in, and was released on bond. His trial was postponed twice and eventually began in August 2018, where he was found guilty of taking Jordan Edwards' life and sentenced to 15 years in prison. This example shows that corrupt police officers must face consequences for their actions and be held accountable. Despite his attorney's appeals, Roy Oliver's guilty verdicts and sentences were upheld by Texas' Fifth Court of Appeals in August 2020. As a result, he will remain in prison until at least 2026. This is an example of a corrupt police officer being caught, convicted, and sentenced to a lifetime in prison. Number 3. Zachary Wester, a former Jackson County Sheriff's deputy in Florida, faced accusations of planting drugs on drivers during traffic stops and then arresting them on false charges. The investigation into Wester began in 2018 when a prosecutor noticed anomalies in his cases and alerted the FDLE. An investigation revealed a pattern of misconduct and abuse of power spanning several years, resulting in Wester's conviction on numerous charges. Wester regularly performed illegal searches of vehicles during traffic stops, planting drugs or other contraband on motorists and falsely charging them. He even stole money from some motorists. This case emphasizes the importance of accountability for corrupt police officers, ensuring they face lifelong consequences for their crimes. The investigation into Zachary Wester's misconduct exposed numerous instances of wrongdoing, including at least 12 cases of falsely arresting motorists on drug charges. Wester was caught on body camera planting illegal substances in one woman's car and falsely charged a man with drug possession for having an empty syringe in his truck. After being fired from his position as a deputy sheriff in 2019, Wester faced charges of racketeering, official misconduct, fabricating evidence, false imprisonment, drug possession, and perjury. In 2021, he was found guilty of 19 charges and sentenced to 12 years in prison, with restitution ordered for his victims. This case serves as an example of corrupt police officers who face lifelong consequences for their actions. Number 4. Michael Dautro, an Edison, New Jersey cop, committed various crimes such as arson, conspiracy to commit official misconduct, and stalking. In 2013, he set fire to a superior officer's home, endangering the family inside. He also targeted another officer's house. Charged with conspiracy to commit official misconduct, Dautro misused police resources to gather information on people involved in a lawsuit against him. His criminal acts continued as he stalked his ex-girlfriend, filed false reports, harassed her, and planted a tracker on her car. This case highlights the consequences corrupt police officers face when caught and jailed for their crimes. In 2017, Michael Daughtry pleaded guilty to 1 count each of arson and conspiracy to commit official misconduct, resulting in a 20-year prison sentence. Prosecutors dropped the remaining charges against him. This case exemplifies the significance of upholding the law and accountability, particularly for those in positions of power. Law enforcement agencies must thoroughly screen and monitor officers to prevent abuses, emphasizing the need for consequences for criminal behavior such as stalking and harassment. The victims of such crimes deserve support and justice. Number 5. Eric DeVolkener, a former Kansas City police officer, was arrested for killing Cameron Lamb, an innocent man, during a police investigation. The police followed Lamb's truck to his home, where Volkener and his partner, Troy Schwamm, entered Lamb's property without identifying themselves or obtaining permission to do so. As members of the Violent Offender Squad, they were tasked with preventing and interfering with violent crimes. But they did not have a legal warrant and were not in police uniforms. Eric DeVolkener, a white former Kansas City police officer, was found guilty of fatally shooting Cameron Lamb while pointing his service weapon at Robert Merritt, who lived with Cameron. Within 9 seconds of the detectives arriving at Lamb's house, Volkener instructed Lamb to turn off the engine and get out of the truck, then fired 4 shots in rapid succession, killing him. In November of 2021, Jackson County Circuit Court presiding Judge James Dale Young sentenced Volkener to a lifetime in prison for taking Cameron's life and committing armed criminal actions. The judge found Volkener guilty of violating Lamb's constitutional rights, as the detectives had no probable cause to believe that he had committed any crime, nor did they have a warrant for his arrest or a search warrant to be on his property. Although prosecutors recommended a minimum of 9 years, the judge sentenced Volkener to a lifetime in prison. Lamb's stepfather expressed hope that the verdict and sentence would prompt reform within the police department and give citizens more of a voice in justice. Volkener's defense argued that there was no evidence to prove he intended to target Lamb, and that he went down to the property solely to protect his partner, Troy Schwamm. Nonetheless, the corrupt actions of police officers like Volkener must be held accountable to maintain the public's trust in law enforcement. Number 6. Daniel Holtzclaw, a former Oklahoma City police officer, committed multiple on-duty sexual assaults against vulnerable women, including those with outstanding warrants or criminal histories. Holtzclaw's abuses were brought to light after a traffic stop assault report, leading to an investigation that uncovered a pattern of abuse spanning several months. In total, 13 women came forward with similar allegations, describing Holtzclaw's manipulation, intimidation, and sexual coercion. Despite Holtzclaw's claims of innocence, the jury found him guilty on 18 counts and sentenced him to 263 years in prison. This case exemplifies the severity of sexual assault crimes by those in positions of authority, emphasizing the importance of accountability and consequences for their perpetrators. Daniel Holtzclaw's on-duty sexual assaults left his vulnerable victims traumatized and ashamed, with little support or justice available to them. His case highlights the systemic issues and power dynamics that contribute to police brutality and sexual violence, particularly at the intersection of race, class, and gender. Holtzclaw's deliberate targeting of women of color struggling with poverty, addiction, or mental illness underscores the need for broader conversations on how systemic inequality enables violence. Furthermore, Holtzclaw's trial and conviction raised ethical concerns about law enforcement's role as public servants entrusted with protecting communities. His actions harm individuals and diminish public trust in law enforcement.